Good morning, everybody. I'm Josh Jabal. I'm the Managing Director of Yale Ventures, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here to the 11th Innovation Summit. We'll have an official kickoff at 11, but we're delighted that you're here to join us for the Biotech Keynote, where I have the great pleasure of getting to introduce two people who are amazing leaders, investors, and supporters of early-stage bioscience research. And we will be hearing from the Dean of the Yale School of Medicine, Nancy Brown, and Reed Jobs, the co-founder and leader of Yosemite Ventures. And I'd like to call them up to the stage to join us in a fireside chat.
They don't trust us to turn the mics on. I think they're already on. So it's really good to be here with you, and particularly to be here with you, Reed. And we're celebrating creativity and innovation and courage to invest in innovation. So I get the privilege to ask you some questions, but we're going to open it up to the audience at the end. So maybe if you would start a little bit with your journey and how it is you became interested in healthcare and cancer in particular.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me here, Nancy. And it's been lovely getting to know you over the past couple days as we've been getting ready for this. And first of all, I want to say it's an honor to be here. And I just want to thank everyone in the audience for showing up for Yale, and most importantly, for showing up when science itself is clearly under massive attack. And we all need solidarity, we need each other, and we need a lot more positivity, and I really thank you guys all for being here. So, I started, unfortunately, with cancer like almost every single other person I've ever met in this space, and it's because of a personal reason. I didn't choose a path that was about, institution or about, honestly, even really being a physician myself, even though I really considered it for a long time. I realized that if I looked at the history of how I'd seen a lot of technology being translated and created in Silicon Valley, the people who made it certainly weren't the investors, and that's what I became. They were really the amazing entrepreneurs. And in Silicon Valley history, there's a model of an entrepreneur founder. My dad was one of these, Bill Hewlett and David Packard. Elon is, still of that model, though he's technically actually not the founder, but that's just our little secret. What I realized was if I want to make a big difference in healthcare, I need to be the key translator of best research into patients, because when we were getting treatment for my family, we had access to the very best in the world, and obviously it was completely insufficient. And the reason for that is because we didn't understand the disease we were dealing with. This was, in the early stages of genetic sequencing, and only were we beginning to understand the causative relationship between certain oncogenes and certain outcomes. And this actually was before the entire real explosion of immunotherapy on the market. Keytruda hit on the market the same year my dad passed away. Unfortunately, it was 2011. And the timing of my entry into the space was really serendipitous. And you always need to have luck on your side. I think you're going to be successful. Only a really prideful person would think otherwise. And at that time, I was in Stanford. I actually visited Yale and I loved it, but my dad was pretty sick, so I needed to stay close to home, and a lot of people have to make that choice. So when he passed away, I was still in college. I was pre-med, and I decided then to actually change. I was going to be a doctor, I was going to save the world, but that was really tough for a couple of years, so I ended up studying nuclear weapons policy instead, which was a lot more cheerful. So I got a master's in that, which was honestly super cool. Those people are like pretty serious. And I decided that, I could pursue some kind of fun thing, in like the Pentagon, which is objectively cool. But I realized that ultimately I really just care about fighting cancer. I think you can only choose to do one, maybe two things in your life well, and it has to be cancer. So that's a little bit how I got here. And then I started a firm called Yosemite that actually is a pretty unusual structure. We created it. And what we do is we look at the best science in the world, we fund it philanthropically, we then continue on with the researchers and the labs that actually create it. We are their first partner and they make companies. We give them the first bit of funding. We sometimes even help them run the companies. We then will help scale them, and we now are involved in, I believe it's 92 companies, 54 clinical trials, and we just got our first approval a few weeks ago. So it's going really well.
So let me ask you a little bit about that design of the company, right? Because on the one hand, it's a venture cap, right? Mm-hmm. But not a usual venture cap, I would say. But then you've also made an investment in helping investigators get started. Mm-hmm. Why did you structure it that way? And tell us about that.
So, to be completely frank, it is not, it is to be the best type of investor we can be. It is in service of our investment outcome. So there are firms that are venture philanthropy firms that have mixed outcomes. You know, some of it's financial, some of it's social impact. We are purely financial. And the reason why I have to emphasize that is because I very much can prove that doing philanthropy makes us much more profitable investors in the life sciences. So what I described to you as the Silicon Valley structure doesn't work in biotech. It's totally different. And that was actually something that, frankly, a lot of other investors didn't realize. You see, the founders are amazing scientists, and they may, but usually don't want to leave their academic posts. So the founder and the CEO ain't the same person. And what you really want is to disaggregate the administrative work from the science that these people are the best in the world at doing. Why would you burden them with HR and legal and fundraising? That's a complete waste of their time. They already waste 20% of their time writing federal grants. It's probably going to get to be a lot more. And I mean, the inefficiencies built into that are unbelievable. So what we do is we kind of copy Y Combinator. And what they do is they seed a lot of companies, they take equity in them, and then they help grow them. And this pipeline has helped start massive Silicon Valley companies, I mean Airbnb, DoorDash, companies you guys all know. And we actually had a similar philosophy at Yosemite, is we're going to use philanthropy as seed funding, really. We have no strings attached, but that is the way we look at it. It is really identifying the same assets we're going to invest in on the other side of the business. And that process has allowed us to work with the best and candidly invest in the cutting edge of the entire next generation of companies in life sciences, from immunotherapy to AI to epigenetic editing, which I really hope we get to talk about.
So actually, I do want to talk about yes. Anyone you want to pick, or multiple ones, but what are the discoveries in which you've invested about which you are most excited?
Okay, great. All right, so much to talk about here, guys. So we were involved with some of the very first companies that were using immunotherapy to target solid tumors, most with CARs, then with small molecules, and now with CARs again after they failed the first time. We're going to make it work this time. So we've been involved in that since the very, very beginning, from the first generation of those companies to hit the clinic, now to the second generation. We are actually, the thing I'm the most proud of is that we've invested in and actually incubated one of the first companies that is testing an epigenetic modulation in humans. And you know how thrilled I am about this technology. It's called Tune Therapeutics. It's out of Duke. And this is something that has now recently been dosed in patients, which is extremely exciting. And it is harnessing a natural methylation program that silences hepatitis B, which affects 300 million people, biggest driver of liver cancer in the world. Liver cancer is number 3. We could take this out, it's a big deal. And right now, 10% of people who get it self-methylate. It's a spontaneous natural immunity. And we believe that we can actually induce that in everyone.
That is pretty cool.
We'll see.
What else you got?
Okay. So, all right, fair enough. All right, we got Chai Discovery is a new one, too. This is a wicked cool AI protein design company that is out of Silicon Valley. They were actually incubated by a few AI companies there. And what they're basically able to do is outperform AlphaFold in protein prediction. And what we were thrilled about is we recently went to an academic institution that won a serious prize on protein prediction recently. And everyone in the lab wasn't using the algorithm that they had won the Nobel Prize for inventing. They were using Chai. And then we went to MIT and Stanford, and it was all the same story. So that is one that we are exceptionally excited about. We think that, just as this past panel has said, AI for drug discovery, drug development is really in its infancy. We think that there's going to be tremendous value to be created here, and frankly, we don't think it's going to be replacing scientists at all. This is going to be something that's going to be extremely complementary. So already those are two aspects we are extremely excited about. The last one I would just say, and we have to pick one, I guess, is in all honesty, and this isn't a plug, but we are finally making our first company at Yale. It's not an accident. It's something that we've spent a long time building with an incredible entrepreneur named Craig Cruz, who's criminally in Europe right now, but fine. And not only is he an amazing serial entrepreneur with Halda and Arvinas already under his belt, but we have actually supported some of his work philanthropically, really through the investigator grant of my incredible colleague, Abel, who's here somewhere in the back, who's an absolute genius. And this is actually a novel company basically in the degradation space, which is unbelievably interesting, and we think is the best-in-class technology building off his earlier achievements at Halda and at his other companies, Arvinas.
So those are amazing successes. Talk a little bit about strategy and how you identify the companies in which you'd like to invest.
So, as I was saying earlier, the culture that I've tried to build at Yosemite is actually very similar to Apple's in that it's an extremely Socratic, debate-fueled culture. So we argue about everything. And the one rule we have is no ad hominems. So as I'm saying, you can tell me, Reed, that is the stupidest idea you've ever had, and that's saying something. And that's great. We want people to go to town on the ideas. But if you attack me personally, that's just crossing the line. So that is our one rule at Yosemite, is we debate everything, frankly, to death, probably excessively. But we look for every single scientific nook and cranny to kill something with. And what we really do is we use our grant program as, frankly, a way to incubate in labs the very best ideas in the world, sometimes even a few kind of baking off, and we'll usually find the best one and commercialize with them. But ultimately, this comes down to really long-term relationships with the researchers we've worked with, really, consecutively for many companies over about 10 years now. And it's that trust that we've built up that allows this to happen.
And so this room is filled with investors. It's filled with scientists who have amazing ideas, with folks from Yale Ventures who are facilitating those connections. What advice do you have for the scientists in the room in terms of putting their best foot forward for venture capitalists and other investors?
Great question. This is a really interesting time because, as we all know, capital is extremely tight, interest rates have remained stubbornly high, and it's really been increasingly difficult to get platform companies funded. So if you talk to a lot of biotech investors right now, they're extremely interested in clinical stage asset programs. If you can get me something that is a clinical trial that's like under $30 million, you're going to get a lot of bites. If it's before that, frankly, a lot of people are going to be quite conservative and will try to have you get clinical data somehow with non-dilutive capital, and then they will want to jump in. So I would say a path to real, honestly, line of sight towards something clinical is going to be a massive advantage right now because we're in, I believe, in unfortunately overcorrected conservative market at this moment in biotech.
So investing from an institutional standpoint, with this is my dean's hat on, investing in the tools to help people translate into patients early, phase 1 kinds of trials you need to see before you're looking at things.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is an interesting time. In academia, we've relied very heavily on government funding. We are in a period when we're going to need to learn to do things differently. We talked a little bit at breakfast about some of your thoughts on that. What do you see, in what direction should U.S. science be headed? And this is a risky question.
Great. Oh, can I just stick with that one first?
I'm opening it up.
The opposite direction. Where should U.S. science be headed? Probably not like away. Which is where we're currently facing. No, but not to be glib. In all honesty, I am flabbergasted by what is happening here just from an economic standpoint, from a geostrategic standpoint, and from a humanities standpoint. I don't think there's really an argument from any one of those positions that what's happening now is logical. I think it's a just brute political act. So I think what U.S. science needs to be, honestly, is not political at all. I don't want, it used to be very historically extremely bipartisan, and what is happening now is gross political interference by one party. And it doesn't really matter to me which party it is, candidly. I really just think any political interference in science is objectively wrong and is going to cloud any kind of outcomes and is never in the public interest. So I just think any kind of government involvement in science is categorically wrong. In its selection process, rather, not that of course they should be funded. No, in terms of the selection process, what we're seeing now is just a political decision being made instead of a scientific one.
And so the role for private investment, you mentioned this is a conservative market. What should the approach be in this era?
We were talking, and it's actually, I was really nervous to come speak to you all because, Yale's scary. But more importantly, this is a really, really quickly changing time for biotech. I don't honestly have my arms totally around what is happening now. I don't think the whole industry does either in terms of the pace of this change and the fronts that this is happening, whether this is DOGE hitting NIH, whether that's the NIH indirects being hit, whether that's the NIH budget now being hit, whether that's now international students being turned away for visas. The whole pipeline of drug development is under strain, kind of systemically. And the broader piece here is this compact between the government and universities that was sort of built, I guess, by Vannevar Bush in '46, is being completely upended. And we can kind of think about why this is happening, but it's happening. So moving to practicality, I think the strategies that won us the Second World War with the atomic weapons program, that won us the Cold War, are seemingly being discarded. And what's going to need to happen is a reimagining of that relationship, because private funding is not going to, substitute for federal funding. The orders of magnitude here are disparate. I can fundraise all day for cancer research. I can't raise $9 billion a year yet. But truly. So of course, people are copying Yosemite's model. They want more venture funds, or trying to do DAFs as well in a bunch of different structures. There's a lot of movement from industry to invest more in science, and a lot of people are trying this. Deerfield's moving into this a lot more. There's some foundations like Pisces that are doing more venture philanthropy models. There's frankly a new large foundation venture group that I'm advising that's actually just in Parkinson's, but it's a similar strategy. So I think you're actually seeing a lot more disease-focused venture firms right now, which I think is awesome. I'm pretty biased, but I think that's really interesting. But the scale of what is being lost here is not duplicable in private funding. The only answer is to get it back federally, and that means to change the way that this is conceived of federally.
Thank you for that very frank answer.
I would love to know how you think we could get it back federally.
Well, so I think many of us and the leaders of, as we talked about at breakfast, of academic institutions are spending a lot of time advocating, both with elected officials, but with our public, right, who vote. And that's going to be critical. I think we've been very shy about advertising what we do. And telling our story and telling how it transformed health, and we also have to change that, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe take a lesson from industry and how we do that.
Well, I really believe that my experience in why I chose to work on cancer is close to universal. Almost everyone who works in healthcare, whether that's cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, you're doing this because you're doing this for someone you lost. And that is the purest, frankly, most philanthropic motivation I could possibly think of. And I find that incredibly compelling, and that is really what our industry is. It's about us trying to help people. And somehow that narrative has gotten lost. I was talking with Pat LaRusso, who's one of your amazing faculty here, and truly like one of the nicest people. And she was explaining to me how the methods Mary Lasker took to prod Nixon to start the war on cancer. I mean, Nixon started the war on cancer, right? Like not, Mr. giving away money here. And he was able to do this because she organized a mail-in campaign of mail-in letters from local newspapers that literally went across the entire country because she was in the media business. And hundreds of thousands of letters came to senators and congressmen from average Americans. And it was the outpouring of that that really led to this. The same thing happened with the March for Dimes with polio. It can be disease-specific or it could be science-specific, but it's that outpouring from the public that hasn't happened right now that is the missing ingredient.
Totally agree. Getting back to that personal motivation, because I think what you're doing is extraordinary. And it was shaped by your experience, but how you operate your company, as you said, is also shaped by experience. What you've witnessed, you probably heard at the dinner table.
Sure.
Talk a little bit more about how what you witnessed growing up has affected your view of venture capital. And
there's a little story that I think about a lot. I don't share this much, but when I was a senior in high school, I was really adamant that like I was not going to be in debt to my parents for college. Like I can do this. Like I'll take out a loan. I can handle this. I'm an adult. I'm sure you know the kind of feeling. And when I confronted my parents with my entire like unnecessary financial plan to do this, they kind of laughed at me. And my dad had a great line where he said, "Listen," he's like, "that's not how this is going to work." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I with all my confidence of an 18-year-old, and he explained to me, he's like, "No, listen, my parents, they paid for me to go to college." And he actually didn't graduate, but that's not on them. And he said, "I'm paying for you to go to college. You're going to pay me back. You pay for your kids to go to college." And I thought that was a pretty darn good, fair deal. And candidly, that's the point of view of Yosemite, is a pay-it-forward mentality. We think that fidelity to the best science is going to create drugs that are going to, frankly, cure patients. And I know that because what we have now is unacceptable. The need is tremendous. And finally, we're dealing with science that is actually biologically rational, whether that's harnessing the immune system, harnessing the epigenetic system, or frankly, designing exquisite ADCs. We are really dealing with things that are orders of magnitude better. And I was just sharing with you, there's a Churchill quote that's been haunting me lately as these NIH cuts are happening about ships going down in sight of port. We can see the port here, and it's really scary to be in a storm right now.
speaking of passing it forward, you're now a dad.
Oh, yeah, but college is a ways away.
College is a ways away. Has that changed your business practice or outlook in any way? I know it's been 4 months, but...
Okay. I've seriously never thought of that. Probably should.
This is bad when you stump the...
No. Honestly, this probably says more, I don't know why, but I've thought a lot more about pediatric cancer, candidly. Just as a fear, which I think is a natural thing for new parents, and because it's not something that we really work on. Pediatrics is a very niche market. It's very hard to invest in. Most pediatric cancers are very rare. There's not a large market for them. Developing drugs, even for diseases that are shared, often have really different outcomes. So, like something that could be curative in a child could be totally ineffective in an adult, and vice versa. So, honestly, I've been thinking a lot more about pediatrics, and honestly, it's a shameful gap for Yosemite. We don't do nearly enough there. Part of that's just the economics, but I've just thought, like, holy cow, I don't do enough for kids.
It's amazing.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Are there other gaps that you see as you're looking at academia, and what areas of research are being pursued, areas in which you'd like to invest where you see gaps of knowledge?
Sure. So what we try to do at Yosemite is have really hardcore debate culture kind of forces that. And what that means is that we've actually had a lot of sectors that we've invested in sometimes for like 10 years now that we've never invested in on the for-profit side. A great example of this is the microbiota. So, I'm a really absolute long-term believer that there's definitely going to be a therapeutic index on targeting either microbes directly or using them as delivery vehicles to tumors and other tissues. And we've invested, frankly, probably a few $1 million in this over 10 years philanthropically at many institutions. And we've never seen any IP that we think is really actionable or defensible or that interesting to be a company. And we're going to keep investing in this because it's still something that we see it has a huge unmapped, untouched therapeutic index, and we're just not there biologically well enough. I would say conversely, almost everything we do on the immunology side or genetic editing side is going to be in the clinic like yesterday. So it really just depends on what we're dealing with. If I could focus on like one area, and this is certainly something we're doing, is getting gene or cell-specific delivery vehicles for genetic and epigenetic payloads is probably one of maybe the single biggest bottleneck right now as I see it.
I'm sure there are people in the audience who are just ready to meet with you afterwards. But so we talked about the consequence of declines in federal funding and that industry can't or investors can't compensate for that. Earlier today we talked about one of the consequences is that science and discovery leaves the U.S. Does it matter?
Yeah.
I thought you might say that.
Yeah, it does. It could also mean that people make more companies, actually. If there's fewer jobs in academia, people are still going to care about cancer, and they might want to instead do more companies. One of the trends I've seen along all the bad ones, one that I love, is a little bit of a generational difference I'm noticing around investigators who are a little bit younger versus some who are a little bit older. And ones who are a little bit older often see industry as, as oil and water to academia. We're not going to do that. We don't do commercialization. It's almost looked at as sullying. And one of the changes I love is younger academics are completely unbothered by that. Frankly, they didn't get in this business to, have the endowed chair, as nice as that is. They got in this business because they want to solve a problem. And if a company's the fastest, most expeditious way to do it, they're going to go to a company. And that is a spirit that I grew up with, that's very familiar to me, and is exactly what we try to encourage. So when we work with folks, we really try to just have them go all the way. And that change means, and it's something that we've seen every year, there's just more and more investigators who have that energy and who have that drive. I think that's maybe going to get turbocharged by this, and you could see a lot more innovation happening in early-stage biotech companies instead of in academic labs.
Fantastic. You avoided my other question.
Yeah. I tried. So is biomedical innovation leaving the U.S. bad for the U.S.? I'm curious what the other argument is. Yeah, it's going to take jobs away, it's going to take innovation away, and there could easily be geopolitical consequences. The U.S. is a great exporter of medicines to the world. We candidly, in my view, subsidize a lot of the world's drug prices, and that is a great deal for other countries as well. The size of our market, the integration of everything we have, both on the academic side and on the capital side, is going to be really difficult for other people to reproduce, and they will try. But it'll just create more inefficiencies for the entire system, and frankly, I don't see that at all as in the U.S.'s interest.
Thanks.
I would love to have someone see it differently.
I think I was harking back to our earlier conversation about interactions with other countries. I think we have a bit of time where we can open this up to questions from the audience, and I think we have 2 mics. We have.
All right. So yeah, just raise your hand if you're interested in asking a question. And may I just ask Dean Brown and Reed if you guys could bring your mics a little closer when you respond. We have a lot of people trying to listen in the courtyard.
Sorry.
Hi, Ben Zeskin from Immuneering. Thank you so much for the thoughtful comments. Reed, you've talked about your goal being to make cancer non-lethal. And I think I like that because it's thinking differently from the war on cancer mentality, right, which you alluded to earlier, right? There's sort of been this mentality to kill cancer, to destroy it, to make it go away as quickly as possible, shrink tumors as quickly as possible. In fact, the metrics we use, like overall response rate, is about how quickly you shrink the tumors. But is it possible, and do you look at ideas where maybe we're shrinking the tumors too quickly and that's driving resistance, and maybe by shrinking them slowly, you can actually make cancer more like a chronic disease, more like HIV, where it's something patients live with and it's not lethal. And I ask because we have a drug in phase 2A, and we've seen a pancreatic cancer patient that's lived for 13 months in the third line setting with their tumor shrinking slowly, 14%, 17%, 24%. So I guess, how do you think about that, and how do you think about this idea of making cancer non-lethal, and is it possible that we just need to control it and keep it in check like HIV, and not necessarily kill it to keep the patient alive long enough that they ultimately die of old age?
Oh, wow, I have so much to say with that. Okay, so I can't believe that you're doing this in pancreatic cancer. I mean, like, prostate would make a ton of sense, right? Because that's overtreated all the time, a ton of smoldering. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Pancreatic, I don't know how that makes sense. Like, you got to cut that thing out before it kills you, like, tomorrow. So that's shocking, and I'd love to see that paper, frankly. The way that we think about it is, first of all, I mean, I'm really careful with my language in this business. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen, and people have bandied around cures for cancer as long as we've known about cancer. And I think, like, look, the deal is we got human cells, and there's always the risk of something going wrong, mutations accruing, and cancer happening of literally any cell in your body. That risk is never going away. The problem with cancer is, as I see it, is it kills you. So I completely agree with your framing. Like, if we don't kill you, we fix the problem as far as I'm concerned. And I do think that there's going to be one of the markets that we've actually been engaging with a lot is the cancer survivorship market. There's 11 million cancer survivors in the US. Interestingly, they're totally overlooked by, like, payers, and actually by a lot of academics, by the way. They're really understudied. And that is obviously only going to increase as we get better therapies, as the population gets older and older. And what I look at is, I think the framing of making cancer non-lethal is something that most people are going to adopt, because we're going to all know people who have gotten through one, maybe two cancers and have lived decades afterwards. So that is exactly how we see it. In terms of not killing it, that's a new one, and I'd love, for pancreatic, that's a new one, and I'd love to follow up on that. For prostate, there's a lot of cases where that makes sense, but I've never heard of that for pancreatic.
So elaborate on that survivorship and your interest, because we sometimes do kill the cancer, but we also knock off a few heart cells and other things in the process. And so how are you thinking about survivorship in your investing?
We got the cancer. Honestly, we think about survivorship as a complex set of comorbidities that we need to monitor. We invest quite a lot in companies that are doing liquid biopsies, which right now are probably best for monitoring recurrence and adherence to treatment, but particularly recurrence. So that is something that is incredibly sensitive right now. But in terms of, like, we don't have that much focused on survivors. Yes. So many people die of cancer that, honestly, we're more focused on that.
So liquid biopsy is an incredible prevention mechanism, potentially, as well. Not just their secondary prevention, but predicting who's going to develop cancer. To what extent are you investing in prevention versus cure?
We've invested in diagnostics heavily over the course of my career. We actually haven't done any out of Yosemite, not because it's not anything we'd think is worthwhile, but honestly, because we're waiting for the readout of the GRAIL trial. That's the biggest one in the world in NHS right now. We have been major early investors in a lot of these companies, and what we are waiting to see, and what I think the whole world is waiting to see, is how early can this early detection really go? Because if it's a prophylactic blood test that can tell you something's at stage 2 and maybe even get you tissue of origin, that is incredibly valuable. But if it's something that can only tell you, advanced stage 4 and you need to get a CT, that's not viable. So there's a huge range in terms of outcomes here for the liquid biopsy market, and we're keeping our powder dry to see what happens.
Are there other questions?
Yes. We're going to give that side of the auditorium a chance, and we'll come back.
Okay.
My name is Gitte Petersen, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Genomic Expression. I'm up here. Hi. And we do a lot of battling over the dinner table too, because my co-founder is my brother. He's got the PhD in genetics. He's a real geek. I'm the closet geek. I raise the money. I'm Danish and coming from a single payer system where you have access to all the data. I just came from the first part of the another session on AI, and it was demonstrated that it's possible with existing data to detect pancreatic cancer a year before symptoms and diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So we collaborating with Stand Up to Cancer for early detection, because the other thing I want to say is that if we only do DNA, it's not going to happen. And we have developed an RNA AI platform that we're moving into early detection. So we would love to talk.
Hell yeah, fantastic. I mean, let's give her a hand. Are you kidding me? Like, pancreatic early detection? That's amazing. Yeah, like, seriously, that's incredible. I'd love to hear more about it. I know of the Felix project, which might be partially funding what you're talking about, which is doing a lot of this on software for, honestly, CTs, because, as you know, the majority of pancreatic cancer patients are detected incidentally. And if you could catch a micromet early on in a CT scan, that'd be outstanding. So, having that run passively is great. So, yeah, let's talk.
Okay. And there's one over
Right,
here.
one from this side.
Thank you, Reed, for an insightful conversation. I share your sensitivity about cancer research, but I wanted to ask you, since the geopolitics was discussed for a little bit, the question I have is, where do you see pandemic co-alignment, the collaboration across the world for developing solutions that will not strain next time this happens, our not alliances necessarily, but co-alignment with other countries, like China, for instance? Do you see any innovation in building some foundation for a system where countries and different societies will not blame each other, but build together in a faster way next time?
Not remotely. Yeah, no, sorry, no, I got nothing. I mean, we have Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So no. No, I
think he may have been asking with a longer time frame.
In a longer time frame, anything's possible, man. I'm focused on the short time frame. Let's get to that longer time frame, and we can have a beer then, buddy. I will tell you that. But let's just get there, because right now I think that is not a priority for them.
Did we have another question over here? Yep.
Yeah, my name's Al Lowe. I'm a neurologist and work in early phase neurodegen for big pharma and biotech startup. The question's on innovation for this Innovation Summit. And I guess the question is, given the current climate of investing, what is the proportion of companies are doing true, like first mover innovation versus fast follow on, especially preclinical? And do you think the proportion is, or the balance is correct right now?
Oh, great question. So frankly, we are seeing way more clinical grade stuff just because the markets have been so crummy for the last couple of years that there's been a massive glut of funding. So you actually have a lot of things that probably should have gotten crossover funding right now, but are still in like stage, Series B, Cs right now. They're moving into the clinic that are frankly quite depressed in valuation. So yeah, we're seeing a lot more clinical grade stuff that is extremely attractive right now, and that's probably not going to last. So there's a lot that is sort of macro environmental that's pushed it that way. So that would be what we're seeing right now in terms of, is that the right ratio? Gosh, I don't know, but we're seeing some really attractive stuff. Yeah, so I hope it is.
Hi, my name is Amy Liang. I'm co-founder and CEO of Couragen. Reed, your mentioning of delivery of genetic payloads that really resonates very well with us. And I know there are a lot of amazing scientists, researchers at Yale University who are exactly working on those. My question is, about with the advancement of genetic medicine, especially, using gene editing, the treatment and cure of pediatric diseases, some of those are rare diseases, it becomes feasible now. But the dilemma is very often it's rare disease. It can be N of 1. And investors or large companies are shying away, or maybe they are not certain, what direction to go. So I very much like to hear your thoughts, because you don't seem like a conventional, VC investor.
I'll go out on a limb and take that as a compliment. Right now, most people use LMPs, which, as you know, go to the liver. And there's quite a lot you can do there, but a lot of trials recently have really failed spectacularly, and unfortunately, there's been some patient deaths recently. I think Rocket, just today I was reading, had to halt their trial because of patient death. And ultimately, we see, and we talk to a lot of people in this space, we see this all being downstream of delivery issues with, frankly, a little bit of what we see as bad targeting, and I'm just going to put it like that. I believe that what we're going to see in the next few years is likely, hopefully, some real hits in genetic and epigenetic targeting diseases and actually larger indications that are very large. So we're doing something like this in hepatitis B right now, but I mean, ultimately, if we could solve this delivery problem, what you'd really want to do is something like Huntington's, of course, with CRISPR, where if you could target the neuronal cells, that would be an exquisite cure, and it's not a small population like some of these other ones that we're talking about. So I really think it kind of needs that delivery to get the step change that we can start affecting major diseases, and it really changes the field on this. That's my view.
So embedded in that question is this, for the investigator, investigating the rare disorder, which may reveal a lot about either mechanism or technology, versus what has traditionally in big pharma been the, and I don't mean to insult you, I'm not suggesting you're part of big pharma, to strive for the blockbuster, right? And something that treats a common disease that, with millions and millions of people. But how do you think about that as an investor? There are going to be some technologies that are enabling, right, that allow you to do something then in a different disease. So talk a little bit about that.
It's a really interesting point. So we do this a lot, and this is where we use a lot of our philanthropy program, because companies need to be really focused. One of the things, again, growing up and like for Yosemite is we really think, companies can really only do one or two things really well. And maybe that's optimizing a platform, but that's really rare. What's much more common is optimizing some assets. Yeah. And, jumping across diseases, first of all, is very risky from a commercialization standpoint. It's from a team, it's something that we don't always like to see. Getting validation academically is outstanding, and that is really, really de-risking, and oftentimes can act as a proof of mechanism to de-risk something for a seed investment. But once you're past that into a company, that's not always the best idea.
Thanks.
Hi there. I am Hamden. I work at Plug and Play. We're a VC fund headquartered in Silicon Valley, and we also partner with Fortune 1000 to Fortune 1 companies. So we have a unique model. And so my question for you is around the unique model that you've built at Yosemite, as well as in your previous role at Emerson Collective, both funds that I would consider are very different in the way that they both fundraise and the goals that they have in terms of investments and ROI. So I just wanted to hear a little bit more from you about your inspiration behind the structure behind Emerson and how that's different in Yosemite.
I wish I could say I structured Emerson, and I will, but that's a lie. No, I didn't have anything to do with that. But what we learned at Emerson was they're actually, what they're optimized to do is to use tool-agnostic capital to approach problems. And what's really neat about that is there's a lot of things that have both for and nonprofit components. Like take something like education, for instance. There's a lot that you can do with education research, education advocacy, and you can marry that with like education startups, which as during COVID have really and after have really exploded for remote learning and things like that, right? Khan Academy, things like companies like that have gotten started in the last say 15 years. And at Emerson, we were able to use a similar strategy for life sciences, which I discovered was just a lot more scalable on an investment side than many of these others because it's really a direct product development pipeline from academic assets to early stage biotech assets, and the people are conserved as well. So it makes a lot of sense for that to be kind of one contiguous team. And it was really only at Emerson that we were able to have the flexibility to sort of discover that. Codifying that in Yosemite, I'll just be frank with you, was not easy. There were a lot of LPs who just said no immediately when they saw that we were taking part of the fund. It's 2.5% of the AUM prorated over 10 years and putting it into a DAF. They're like, wait, so we're paying 2 sets of fees here. Like, that's ridiculous. Who do you think you are? They're like, seriously, get out of here. And so that, we kind of had to like prove that the market would accept that. We've done that now, and we actually are seeing some people copy us, which I love. So I really want other firms to do the same model in other diseases. It's more money for research, and it's going to help patients. But yeah, frankly, it took a long time at Emerson to codify that, and only now can I really say that Yosemite has that, institutionally, and it took a long time.
We have time for one or two more.
So down here.
Hi, I wonder if, speaking on behalf of your sector, do you take any responsibility for kind of the intensity of this backlash against science and technology that's being politically expressed right now? Could you have done anything different?
Just representing your sector.
Did you do anything wrong?
Did I do anything wrong?
Could you have done anything differently?
Could I have done anything differently in speaking for...
your sector and communicating your goals and your message?
Not you personally.
Oh, no.
Just saying.
Personally. First of all, I love critical questions, and I'm sure I can be way better than I am. I probably could have been a lot more memorable. I'm still sort of confused how COVID wasn't like the most unifying thing for biotech of all time. Because the way that I look at it, Moderna's wearing a cape here, and so is BioNTech. They saved millions of people with breakthrough cures in record time. And you know what? In all fairness, Warp Speed was great, and the first Trump administration should be proud of what they did. It's funny that they kind of try to hide it now, but they should be really proud. They saved hundreds of thousands of Americans and probably millions of people worldwide by what they did, fast-tracking American biotechnological innovation to save the day. So it's kind of amazing to me how we screwed up that messaging and have lost the trust of half the country and have ceded the platform to Secretary Brainworm to just mendaciously disseminate a bunch of misinformation. No, it's truly that's who we've just allowed to run the narrative here. So I will take a little responsibility for that. I don't think whatever. But yeah, I don't know how our industry got that one so wrong.
So I'm going to take the moderator's privilege here and say thank you on behalf of all of us. I think you have brought us some hope today, partly by virtue of who you are and what you're investing in, and partly by virtue of presenting a narrative of people starting new companies and a way forward. And so for that, we're very grateful.
Well, I just want to say it's a privilege to be here because what we're doing is giving people hope here. We are literally helping people in their darkest times. I just hope all of you are so proud of what you do. We are helping millions of people who we'll never meet, and that is a great calling, and you should be really proud of what you do. So I just hope we all stick together, and you should stay proud. Thank you, guys.